Okay, this is Achron Shel Pesach. This is the last Maamar in Likutei Torah, Parshas Tzav, on Pesach. And I say this with a little bit of joy, that when we complete this Maamar, we will have learned all the Maamarim of the Alter Rebbe Likutei Torah in Parshas Tzav. This project, which has been very generously sponsored by the Chanan Fund for close to 10 years, has allowed us to learn many Maamarim of the Alter Rebbe. And when you see the completion of one part of it, it's in itself very meaningful. And when Hashem helps us and we complete this Maamar, we will have done, for better or for worse, all Maamarim of Likutei Torah Parshas Tzav. I'll tell you, Parshas Pesach, I'll tell you a Maisele about finishing. I had a Malamed, who was a Malamed to many, many people. His name was Rabbi Fuchs, Rabbi Fax. He was a Malamed in the Bavish Yeshiva, first in Bedford Dean in Ocean Park for many, many years. I learned by him in Tafshan Lamed Vav. And he was a big Talmud Chacham with an incredible memory. He was so humble it was almost disgusting. And he was a very sweet man. And whenever I would see him, he would stop and tell me a story or a vort. And over the years I collected quite a few nice stories and thoughts that I heard from him. And one of them is the following: that when he was in yeshiva in Atvatsk, his chavrusa was one of the Fagins. The Vriedik Rebbe's, the previous Rebbe's secretary, was a Chacha Fagin. The Chacha Fagin was Adam Godel B'Yeser. He was a giant of a man. He was a big chassid. He was also a big maskell and a big goan. And an Eved Elakim. He was a Tamim from the Gehobenet Tamimim. And he was extraordinarily busy. He was very, very busy. He was almost never home. And when he was home, he was also busy. So one of his sons, I don't know the name of his son, wasn't well. He was not feeling well. So he couldn't come to the yeshiva. So Rabbi Fuchs got permission from Dan Holla to go. They were chavrusas. They learned chassidus together. He got permission from the yeshiva, from his mashpia, from the mashgiach, to go learn chassidus in his home. So he came to his house and they were learning. And the Chacha happened to walk in, which was a fortuitous thing. It was not something that happened all the time. And the Chacha saw his son with his chavrusa learning, whether he was laying in bed or sitting in bed, a Maamar chassidus. So the Chacha Fagin asked them what they're learning. So they answered that they're learning the Hemshech Rosh Hashanah Samachei. Hemshech Rosh Hashanah Samachei is about 95, 96 pages or something like that. So it's a pretty substantial Hemshech. And it's unusual in the fact that it has a complete end. The two Hemshechim, which are completely finished, are the Samachei Rosh Hashanah and Samach Vav, where you actually have Hashlamas Adrush, how the Maamar finishes. Right? Eter also has Hashlamas Adrush, but the Hashlamas Adrush of Eter, after you finish with the Hashlamas Adrush of Eter, you still need Hashlamas Adrush. But Samachei is complete. He answers every question he asks in the beginning of the Maamar, in the last part of the Maamar. And it's a masterpiece. It's a very special Hemshech. So Reb Chacha said to them, what are you learning to Samachei? Wo haltir, were you holding? So he answered, Mim geendik mit nersten Maamar. We finished the first Maamar. The first Maamar of Rosh Hashanah Samachei is extraordinarily difficult about the three Madreges. And Ratzon, the Frierdiker Rebbe spoke it in Tafshin Gimel, Bariches Gedela. So they tell Reb Chacha they finished with the first Maamar. So Reb Chacha laughs and he says, Ich hab durchgetragen dem ganzen Hemshech 30 Mal. Und ich hab mit ihm nicht geendigt. Und ihr hat geendigt dem ersten Maamar. Which means in English, I have thought through the entire series, the entire Hemshech, 30 times, and I'm not done with it. But you finished the first Maamar. He was trying to teach them a thing or two about what it means to finish. So you're never finished, but we're complete, if you will. On whatever level we're going to do it, when we finish this Maamar, with Hashem's help, we will have completed all the Maamar of Pesach. Anyway, enough introduction. We all know the famous word from the Tzemach Tzedek, that Pesach is the Yom Tov of Geula. Pesach is the Yom Tov that has to do with the idea of redemption. Now, when you learn Chassidus about Geula, about the idea of redemption, what do you learn? That Geula always has a constant idea the constant idea of Geula is Nigla Leya Melech Malcha Amlocham HaKadosh Baruch Hu B'Chaveidu V'Yatzmi U'Golam. That redemption means a divine revelation that uplifts. In other words, one is not redeemed when their captors, when their masters are removed. When a person is a slave or a prisoner or an exile, and you destroy the shackles or the bars or the walls that keep them in, and they are free to leave, that's not redemption, that's not freedom. That's simply killing or destroying or undoing their enslavement, their slavery. Being free is much, much more than not having a master. Being free means the power to be free. Or like the Rebbe would so often say in the 70s when he spoke about the protests of Russian Jews, that their slogan was, their sisma was, Shalach es ami, send my nation, let my people go. And the Rebbe said there's no such quote. The quote is, Shalach es ami v'yavduni. A Jew is not free because you take him out of Egypt. A Jew is free when you make him a slave of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ein lecha ben cheden el mi she'esek b'talmud Torah. We're free in our relationship with God. We're not free in the fact that nobody else can tell us what to do. I saw a video of the Rebbe by Dollars, where they were discussing the Jews from Russia, whether they should come to Israel or come to America. And the Rebbe said, if the Jews from Russia come to America, they're going from one galus to another galus. You have to encourage them. The Rebbe said you can't force them. The Rebbe spoke about this once, that you can't impose it. You can't make somebody. You can't use politics and other means to force the Yidden to go to Eretz Yisrael. But you should encourage them to go to Eretz Yisrael, because the Rebbe said if they're going to come to America, they're going from one galus to another galus. So freedom, Geula, is not about not having a master. Freedom is about taking on personal responsibility and feeling the authority and the accountability that comes along with being responsible for self. So the Torah says that Yetzias Mitzrayim did not happen by Makas Bechiris. Yetzias Mitzrayim did not happen by the other Makas. Yetzias Mitzrayim happened by Etzem HaYem Hazeh, not Betzem HaLayla, not B'Chatzi HaLayla. At midnight, Egypt was punished. The Jewish people were spared. At midday, the Jewish people were given freedom. The Egyptians were begging them to leave. Kulmu, tzu'u, miteich ami, gamatem, gam, whatever you want. L'chu, ivdu, asadeshem, elakechem, kedaberechem, nemt alles. Go! But they didn't leave till Etzem HaYem Hazeh, till midday. And at that moment, there was a revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that in Chumash it says, caused the dough not to become chometz. And Bepnimis HaYarim was in of Geula, freedom. So Pesach is the holiday of freedom. The holiday of freedom means it's the days, the 7 or 8 days, when there is Hayom HaMe'elin is Garim V'Nasim. And because we make a Seder, Bavur Zer Le'amarti El B'Shosh Yesh Matzah U'Morah V'Nachal Lefanecha. And we say it with our children, and we eat matzah, and we eat mutton, and we do Hesebim, we have Dalet cases. And of course we do V'Yigadat Olavincha, we tell the story of the Seder to our children, we get our children to ask, and we answer them, and so on and so forth. So because Niskarim, we remember Yetzias Mitzrayim, so V'Nasim, it says in Chassidus, from the Kisvei Arizal, that by remembering the events that happened years ago, it's happening to us now. It's not Hakedias HaMagil L'Mafreya, it's not a retrospective, something that happened a long time ago, because then it's Le Yotza, that's not the point. The point is that it's happening now. And by talking about Yetzias Mitzrayim, by celebrating Yetzias Mitzrayim, by remembering Yetzias Mitzrayim, we experience a Geula now. And all of Pesach is connected to Geula. All of Pesach is the idea that the Eibishter gives a koyach to raise us above whatever Mitzrayim, whatever Mitzarim HaGvul, whatever constraint, whatever limitation we find ourselves in, and bring us to a place of freedom. All of Pesach, from the first day of Pesach to the last day of Pesach. So the Tzemach Tzedek said that Pesach is about Geula, Yetzias Mitzrayim, and the last day of Pesach is not called Shmini Shel Pesach, it's called Achron Shel Pesach. And the reason it's called Achron Shel Pesach is because it has to do with the last step of Geula, the Geula connected to Mashiach Tzidkenu. The Geula Amitas Vashleima Adei Mashiach Tzidkenu. So all of Pesach is about freedom and redemption. And as I said earlier, this doesn't only mean that we don't have a master. It means that we've been given the koyach and the achrayis and the schus to be free and to serve Hashem as Bnei Chayrin. And again, api Torah, you're not free unless you're connected to Hashem. Even though connecting to Hashem means you have to do this mitzvah and that mitzvah and the other mitzvah, those mitzvahs, chas v'sholom, to think of them as things which imprison us or inhibit us. These mitzvahs are our freedom. They make us from finite human beings into infinite entities connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to Ein Sof, to the Eibishter himself. So it begins on the first day Pesach with Yetzias Mitzrayim, which happened in the year 2448, and it ends on the last day Pesach, which has to do with the Gula Amitas Vashleim. So all of Pesach has to do with Geula. So we have, of course, the story and the siches that the last days of Pesach we don't say Shechayanu. And there's a story with the Rebbe Rashab and his granddaughters, the Rebbe Chayamushka and Chana, which was a throwback to a story that had happened when the Rebbe Rashab was a child by the Rebbe Marash and by the Tzemach Tzedek, which his older sister and his brother Devei Aleya, and so on. And the bottom line is, the reason on the last days of Pesach we don't say Shechayanu, because the last days of Pesach, the first days of Pesach have to do with the first Geula, the last days of Pesach have to do with the final Geula, and Shechayanu you can only say on a Zman, on a Yom Tov, which is already actual, not potential. And therefore, even though Api Nigla, there's other reasons why we don't say Shechayanu, because you only say Shechayanu at the beginning of each Mayit. And Shvi Shal Pesach and Achan Shal Pesach are not in any way, shape, or form Regel B'fnei Atzmi, like you say about Shmini Atzeres. But Api Pnimis HaYonam, they're not saying Shechayanu and Shvi Shal Pesach and Achan Shal Pesach is disconnected to Mashiach. And until Mashiach comes, it's only from Koyach. Until Mashiach is revealed, it's only from Koyach, not Paltiel. And you can't say Shechayanu when something that has not yet occurred. So this Maamar is going to be discussing Achan Shal Pesach. More broadly, it's going to be discussing Shvi Shal Pesach and Achan Shal Pesach. This is, in a way, you could call this Maamar a classic. It's certainly the basis for a whole handful, for a whole group of Maimarim, single Maimarim and Hemsheichim and so on and so forth, that discuss basically, B'klalos, the idea of Kriyas Yamsuf, which happened when the Yidden left Mitzrayim on Shvi Shal Pesach, and the Kabbalistic concept that's called B'kiyas Hanor, the splitting of the river, which is going to happen when Mashiach comes. You have this in so many places, including Ba'arichas Gedela, in the Maimarim of the Mittel Rebbe, in Shara Emunah. The Mittel Rebbe Shara Emunah is very, very long, and he basically compiles a whole bunch of Maimarim of the Alter Rebbe into one story that starts with the beginning of Pesach and then finishes with the end of Pesach and the end of Mashiach Tzidkenu. And these ideas are found there as well. You also have from the Rebbe Marash, and so on. There's a lot of Maimarim that go on this sugya of Vehenif and Vehechedim and so forth and so on. So the Maamar basically is about the idea of Kriyas Yamsuf and the idea of B'kiyas HaNohar. That when Yidden left Egypt, there was a splitting of the sea, of the Yam. And when Mashiach is going to come, in addition to the idea of the splitting of the sea, there's also going to be the cracking, the breaking of the river, of the Nohar. Now, when you think of a Yam versus a Nohar, you would hardly think that the splitting of a Nohar is a big deal. A Yam means a sea, Yam means an ocean. And a Nohar means a river. You can't exactly compare the two, right? A river, as the largest rivers in the world, don't have any comparison in terms of size and volume of water to an ocean. But of course, when you speak the Inyanim Beruchnius, you have to understand what they mean metaphysically, spiritually. A Yam basically means a lake. A lake could be 100 feet across, it could be 100 miles across, and it could be 10,000 miles across. As long as the water is sitting in a bowl, in a basin, where the water is sitting still, and it's not moving from a high point to a low point, it's called a Yam. A Nohar is a river, where the water is constantly moving. The Hebrew word Nohar actually means to run, to move from point A to point B. And a Nohar is water that cuts through rock and so on and so forth to come from a high place to a low place. And the Nohar, the river, ends up in the sea. All the waters of the river, which come from snow melt and from rain, which falls on mountains, and a lot of it also comes from subterranean water, from the Mayim Chayim, from wells and from springs and from fountains. Like the Gemara says, Nahara mikipi mivrich, right? There's a big question in the Gemara. Waters of a river, they come mostly from the rain and the snow. They come mostly from their source. And b'derech klal, the halach is not a mekipim mivrech, except for certain times of the year, that in Yom Nisan and Yom Tishrei, the waters of a river come from springs, and it's moving water. So when you juxtapose a nahar against a yam, the physical size doesn't matter that much in mystical terms, but its shape and its design and its function matters an awful lot. In a yam, whether it's a small lake or it's a massive ocean, the bottom line is the water is sitting in one place. And a nahar of any size is running from a high place to a low place and ending up in the yam. So Kabbalistically, yam, a basin of water which is sitting still, is a lower level. It goes Kabbalistically on Malchus. And nahar, a river which is running from a higher place to a lower place, goes Kabbalistically on Bina. And it's going to be explained in this Maamar, and of course it's brought in so many subsequent Maamarim, that when the Jewish people left Egypt, there was the Bekriyas HaYamsuf, the sea had to be split. The Yam, the basin of water, was split and the Jewish people crossed, or whatever they did. When Mashiach comes, there's going to be also Bekriyas HaNahar. In addition to the splitting of the sea, there's going to be the breaking of the river, which is mystically a higher level, not just Malchus, but also Bina. That's more or less the intent and the design of this Maamar. The additional component to this is going to be that both of these events, the Kriyas Yamsuf, which happened historically when Yidden left Egypt, and the Bekriyas HaNahar, which is going to happen, the Yossi Love, is the precursor to an event of the Sinas HaTeira. After Kriyas Yamsuf, Yidden got the Teira at Har Sinai. After the Bekriyas HaNahar, which is going to be when Mashiach comes, there's going to be the giving, the revealing of Seides HaTeira, Seita Meo Umistit Tzvei. The Pnimius HaTeira, which is going to be revealed to Mashiach, happens after the splitting of the river. And that's the other idea that this Maamar is going to explore. That the idea that Hashem split the sea, that Hashem is going to split the river. So of course, Pshutei Shel Mikra, we all learned Chumash, right? Hashem split the sea because they were being chased by the Egyptians. There was the desert here, and there were the Egyptians behind them, and the sea was in front of them, they had no place to go. So the Eibishter said, they jumped into the sea, and the sea split. But Bepnimis HaYanim, the Eibishter had many ways he could have saved the Jewish people. And they're going into the sea, and the sea splitting was a mystical idea of revealing godliness, of being Megala Lakus, which was an introduction, which was a preparation for the Gilui Lakus associated with Teira, which happened the first time at Har Sinai. And although it's written in Chassidus that Matan Teira le yeh eda pam, Hashem is never going to give the Teira again. Lasad Lavid is not going to be another event of Matan Teira, but there's going to be a new Gilui of the Teira we received at Har Sinai, which is Pnimius HaTeira, Teira Madrega V'ri'iyah, and so on, as we'll see by Riches in this Maamar Be'ezer Hashem. And that's what this Maamar is about. The last days of Pesach, the first days of Pesach, we left Egypt. And 7 days later, a week later, we went into the Yam, and we said Shira. And it prepared us to receive the Teira. And when Mashiach comes, there's going to be an additional event of splitting, not just the sea, but the river, which is going to prepare us to receive the Teira Chadoshim Iti Teita, which is going to be then. So at least I'll read one line. Yeah, let's read line 2. V'heinif yodei al hanohar. When Mashiach comes, he's going to raise his hand up over the river. It doesn't say who V'heinif is. But Pashas V'heinif means the Eibishter. By Yetzias Mitzrayim, Moshe Rabbeinu raised his hand, and he was raising his hand holding a stick, right? Here he's raising his hand alone. Not over the river. By Yom Rucha, with the power of his spirit, of his wind. V'hikahu l'shiva nacholm. It's going to be split into 7 streams. As opposed to when Yidden left Mitzrayim, Moshe Rabbeinu raises his hands holding a stick, and he splits the Yam Suf not into 7 parts, but into 12 parts. A lot of these ideas are going to be explored in this Maamar. And again, keep in mind that, first of all, the foundational idea that I mentioned is that the Gilui Elokus, the revelation of godliness, and of course our Maamar is going to discuss how splitting the sea and cracking the river allows for a great revelation of godliness, inspires Geula. It empowers us to be free. In other words, it gives us more koyach to be ourselves as servants of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it sets up our ability to receive the Teira and to learn the Teira, understand the Teira, and of course, most importantly, to do what is written in the Teira. As we do it now, in the Mitzvah Shama, we're going to do it on even a higher madrege, L'Yossi Love. So, Let me introduce the Maamar by telling you what's going to happen. In other words, let me share with you some of the insights that the Maamar is going to explore in a preparatory way, and then we'll learn it inside, okay? When water is held, whether it's being held in a round bowl or it's being held in a long, skinny pipe, which is carrying the water from a high place to a low place. The obvious fact is when the water is being held in any kind of a receptacle, any kind of keli, which keeps the water in one place, the water is only inside and it's not outside. The yam and the nohar represent bodies that hold water. And of course, the concept of holding water is that the water is only inside those bodies and not outside those bodies. So Kabbalistically and mystically, the yam and the nohar come to represent concealment. That the waters are only inside the yam and not available to what's beyond the yam. The waters are only inside the nohar and not available to what's beyond the nohar. Which means that in one place there's a lot of water. And in another place there's no water at all. The fact that the water is being held and being kept in one place means that in one place there's lots and lots of water, and in someplace else there's no water at all. And the concept of breaking the yam and breaking the nohar is to break that limitation. The idea that the water is only inside the yam and not available beyond the yam is broken, and the waters extend from the yam to the oretz, to the yabosha, to what's outside of it. Similarly, the waters that are being held in the nohar, which is a constraint and is a concealment, when the nohar is split, the waters become available to what's outside the nohar, to the world that's outside. In other words, the yam and the nohar, on the one hand, represent a richness, a reservoir of water, of life. On the other hand, they represent a concealment, because it's the reservoir of water and life which is only in their place and not outside of their place. And the fact that it's only in their place and not outside of their place is a constraint, it's a limitation, it's a helam v'hester. And kriyas yavtiv, kriyas hanar means breaking that limitation, so the water should go from a higher level to a lower level. Okay, this is the basic concept that this Maamar is going to be about. So now let's talk through the steps, okay? According to Torah, and this is discussed at length in Hasidus, particularly like I said, the Shad HaMunah from the Middle Rebbe, underneath the ground there's a Tehoim, the subterranean waters. And the Tehoim, the waters that are underneath the ground, are considered Mayim Shein Lehem Sof. They're considered absolutely infinite. There can never be anything physical which is infinite. It can never be anything which is physical and finite. The earth is a finite globe, which has an infinite supply of water, but it represents the idea of infinity. But al pi Torah, the waters of the Tehoim, the waters of the abyss that are underneath the ground, never emerge, they never surface. They're always under the ground. But they push up towards the surface, and in pushing up towards the surface, they push a secondary Tehoim, a lesser degree of subterranean water, what they call the water table, I guess, in ecology, towards the surface. And that's the concept of fountains and wells, mayones, fountains. There's a lot of places in the world where there's water seeping up through the ground to the surface. And the water which is seeping up through the ground to the surface, this is what we call a mayon, a fountain or a well. And what pushes the water to the surface is the Tehoim. So the Tehoim itself, the subterranean waters, which never emerge, which never surface, are infinite, metaphorically, in a metaphor, in a mushroom. And they push the water which is under the ground in a secondary way, in other words, the water which came from the surface and seeped into the ground, pushing it out of the ground, coming up to the surface. This water that emerges in these fountains is called Mayim Chayim, living waters. Why is it called Mayim Chayim? Why is it called living waters? It's called Mayim Chayim because it's connected to the Tehoim. It's connected to its source, which is under the ground. Its source under the ground is infinite. Because its source under the ground is infinite, these waters that seep out of the ground are called Mayim Chayim, living waters. And if you're familiar with halachas, you know that Mayim Chayim are metaher without any limitations, right? Mayim Chayim are metaher b'zeichelin, Mayim Chayim are metaher b'mashahu, there's no shear of mem saw, doesn't have to have ashbeden. living waters that are connected to a subterranean source can be metired, like the Lashon of the Mishnah, which everybody knows. If a needle, a little water spills over like a little gal, means a wave, spills over the machat, it becomes tahir. Over there it's talking about a mikveh, but in a mayon, there's no shear of 40 saw of water, there's no such thing as the water standing still, there's no limitation, as long as it's mayim chayim. And there are certain things that you must have tara b'mayim chayim, like a zov and other things, that for the paraduma waters, you can't use the waters of a mikveh, miksham, it has to be dafke mayim chayim. It's called mayim chayim. The thing about these little fountains is two things. Number one, it's not a lot of water. It just trickles down the ground like a little flow. And number two, it's impossible to stop it because it's connected to a source which is infinite. It comes out in this little leak, almost little spillage, but it doesn't stop. It keeps on going, because it's connected to an infinite source. And of course, what happens is, in many, many, many places, you have these little fountains that are producing water. And water, of course, tends to go down. And it finds the lowest place to go down through. It also cuts a path through the ground, through the surface, through the rock, and so on. And eventually they begin to join. And as these little streams begin to join, they become stronger and stronger until they become a very, very powerful river with an incredible raging force that cuts through rock and mountain and earth and digs a path to the sea, as it were. So it starts out as this teeny tiny little creek that's streaming a little bit of water. But a little bit of water that comes from underneath the ground is called mayim chayim, living waters, because it's connected to mayim shein lem sof. It's connected to something which has no end, spills over into a very powerful raging force of a river. And of course the river flows downstream from a higher place to a lower place, and it ends up in the yam, ends up in the sea. The sea is this big bowl that holds the water. And of course the sea has salt. It's not mayim chayim, it's not sweet water, it's salty water. And of course what happens is the waters of the yam sit in the ocean and they seep through the bed of the water into the ground. They seep from the bottom of the yam, from the base of the bowl of the basin, which is holding the water. They seep into the ground, and of course, as they make their way through the rock and the soil, they're purified. The salt is removed. They become sweet again, and then eventually the cycle starts all over again. Those waters that came from the yam, which seeped into the earth underneath the yam, finds its way to subterranean waters, and then is pushed up to the surface by the mei hatahoim and comes out again in a nachal, in a little stream, and the cycle goes over and over again. It's a cycle. It's called a cycle of water. The subterranean waters emerge, then they develop incredible force. They end up in the sea. They're purified by the earth, and the cycle repeats itself over and over again. This is a physical mashal, which the Mittel Rebbe explains at length in the Shara Emunah, and I believe it's in other places in Hasidus, and I also think we've had opportunity over the years to discuss this. So now, Kabbalistically speaking, the Mei HaTaheim is Keser, Pnimius HaKeser. The secondary Tahoi means the waters that are underneath the ground that will eventually surface is Chitzenius HaKeser. The little streams, little mayones, little fountains is Chochmah. The raging river is Bina. And the yam, the ocean, is Malchus. And then it's steeping into the ground means going from a higher world to a lower world, and then it reemerges in Chochmah and in Bina and so on. The cycle repeats itself. What's the depth here? What's the depth? The depth is that the waters of a mayan, the waters of a fountain are mayim chayim, they're living waters. They're living waters because they're connected to Ein Seif, the river. Now, this is not a shiur in halacha whether a river has a din of a mayan, not a din of a mayan, like Rabbi using an ashbeder, not using an ashbeder. It's a ganze geschichte, which is not for us to discuss at the moment. If I'm not mistaken, the halacha is, but the Gemara discusses this, that you're allowed to table in a nohar, except b'yemid the Tishra, b'yemid the Nisan, for different reasons, or not for different reasons. There's some controversy about it, and it's not my department. But the waters of the river are much more powerful than the waters of the stream. But the waters of the river are not so directly connected to the source, for a variety of reasons. And one of them is, as I already mentioned, the waters of the river are not only from Mei Mayan, waters that come from the fountain, they include also snowmelt and rainwater, which are not coming from underneath the ground. They're not mayim chayim, not living water, because they're connected to a source which has no end. They're coming from the heavens, and they're coming down through the mountains. So a river is a mix. So the way it's understood in Kabbalistic terms, you would say the following: a river is raging and noisy and powerful and strong. A stream is quiet, peaceful, onarash, onatumul. The raging river hides its source. When you see the powerful force of a river, the fact that the source of this river is mayim chayim, is living water, which is connected to mayim she'ein lehem seif, the me'atahim, is lost on you. You see the river. The river is very powerful. It's very formidable. It's very impressive. And the fact that the river source, which is so quiet and so soft, but is chai, is living, because it's connected to the source of life, which is ein seif, which is the Eibishter, is lost on the river. So the force and the power of the river is actually hiding the mayim chayim, the living element of water, the ein seif element of water, which is before it. So the Nahar covers over the Mayan. The Nahar is loud and noisy and large. The Mayan is quiet and peaceful and serene. But the Mayan is Chai, and the Nahar is not necessarily Chai. And the Mei HaNahar hide that you should forget the Mei Mayan, its source. And then, of course, the same thing repeats itself when you have a yam, a basin of water, where the water collects. So the water inside the basin, inside the bowl, especially if you're talking about an ocean, is very, very voluminous. It's very large. It's very vast. It's a lot of water. But it keeps the water inside of itself. And by keeping the waters inside of itself to what's beyond the basin is complete concealment. The waters are not reaching. So just like the river hides, the sea hides. The river hides, and because of the raging force of the river, you should not appreciate the fountain, which is living water, that's its source. And the sea hides by keeping the water inside of itself. It's not spilling over onto the yabosh, onto the dry land, which is beyond it. So in its place, there's a lot of water. Outside of its place, there is no water. So the Nahar and the Yam both represent concealment. The Nahar and the Yam both represent concealment, but in opposite ways, really. The Nahar represents concealment because the waters of the Nahar are so powerful that you don't see its source in the Mayan. And the Nahar represents concealment not because they're hiding another kind of water other than themselves, but they're keeping the waters to themselves. In other words, the Nahar is giving, but what the Nahar gives conceals over what's above what it's giving. The Yam isn't giving, and in not giving, it's concealing over what it could be giving, what's there. So it says in the Psukim, and it's explained in Chassidus, this is the concept of Kriyas Yamsuf. When the Eibishter gave us the Torah, before that we had to split, the sea had to be split, and the waters which were being kept in the higher world had to spill over into the lower world. And when Mashiach comes, there's going to be B'kiyas HaNahar. In other words, when Mashiach comes, there's a Nahar, a raging river, which gives so much. Mashiach is coming, it's connected to a great revelation. But the gift of the raging river covers over something quieter and deeper. And only by cracking, so to speak, the river do you access the Mei HaMayon, the Chochmah, the source which is behind it. And both of these ideas are going to be explained in this Maamar, using the mashal of Asias Hadibur and Asias HaMachshava. I could continue talking, I could continue giving you oral insight into the Maamar, but at this point, let's start. Okay, let's start. I've given you enough background. There is much background that I'd like to give. Let's begin to learn. So I'm going to start the Maamar from the beginning again. We're going to start again on line 2. V'heinif Yado al HaNahar. When Mashiach comes, he will raise his hand over the river. Bayam, with the force, ruche of his spirit, of his wind. V'hikahu l'shiva nechalim, and the river is going to split into 7 parts. So the Rabbi immediately flips from the B'kiyas HaNahar L'Yasad Lavi to the Kriyas Yamsuf, what happened when Yidden left Mitzrayim. Hine, Yamsuf u'bechinas Malchus d'Atzilus. The Yamsuf, the sea of Suf, which is the waters that were split when the Yidden left Mitzrayim on the way to Har Sinai. And as we explained before, the splitting of the sea was very little about getting rid of Egypt and much, much more about preparing us for the revelations of Matan Torah. Says the Rebbe, the Yam Suf is Malchus of Atzilus. Malchus of Atzilus is the end of Ein Seif, right? It says in Kabbalah that Seif V'Gili Ein Seif is in Zoh, but Malchus has a Pnimius, which is also part of the Ein Seif. But it keeps it to itself. And in keeping it to itself, it's a tzimtzum. What is the mashal that describes this idea that Malchus Atzilus keeps it to itself? Says the Rebbe, Shi Bechines Dibur Ha'elyon. It's the supernal words, it's the words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shahad Dibur, who's safe for the Kol Dargin, words are the lowest level, they're the last level. Remember, we have 3 levushim, right? Machshava, Dibur, Ma'aseh, thought, speech, and action. But by the Eibush, there's no such thing as Ma'aseh, there's no such thing as action, because there's nothing other than him, there's nothing outside of him. There is simply a madrega which is called the Bure Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Choshev Ma'aseh. The level of the Eibish's speech, which is action equivalent. There's 2 madregas, the madrega of Dibur, and the madrega of Dibur, which is Choshev Ma'aseh. That's why he says Dibur is safer the Kol Dargin. And as you'll see soon, Dibur being the end of Seder Ishtalshalos, the end of Atzilus, is a tzimtzum. Dibur hides. Says the Rebbe, Shebedvar Havai Shamayim Nasa. We all know the Eibishter created the world through speech, through words. V'chol Asar Maamar, and the 10 utterances with which the Eibishter created the world, which are the end of Atzilus, which Hashem speaks in creating the world. Hey, Mam Shacham Esfiras Atzilus. Maybe they come from the 10 Sfiras of Atzilus. However, but it comes down to the letters of words, which the letters of speech, which the Eibishter spoke in creation. Right? The 10 utterances of creation are Eir and Rakia and so on and so forth, correspond to the 10 Sfiras. But the Asarim Amaras are not the Gila, the 10 Sfiras themselves. The Asarim Amaras are the Gila, 10 Sfiras through the Asarim Amaras, through the words, through the Asarim Amaras, which is the Tzimtzum of Malchus. Or to say this a little bit differently and a little bit more broadly, there's 2 sets of words. 2 sets of words. It says in the Zayir, Asara Hakaf. There is the Asera Sadibris, the 10 utterances that do with Torah, which is Chochmei Elah, Chochma Vatzilas. And there's the Asera Mamaras, 10 utterances of creation, which is called Chochma Tata, the lower Chochma. And of course, the difference is that in the Asera Sadibris of Torah, the Eibush is revealed in the lower world, as we'll see by Arichas in this Maamar. And in the Asarim Amaras, the Eibush is concealed. The words hide. So the Eibush, in creating the world, is revealing 10 Sfiras of Atzilus. But the Eibush, in creating the world, is revealing 10 Sfiras of Atzilus through words. And the words hide and cover over much or most or almost all of what the Sfiras of Atzilus would have to give. And he explains it in the following way. Line 9. V'hadibur hu mailim u'machasa le'lam shacha. The fact that the event of creation has to do with speech means that the words that are carrying the oir, because they're words of speech, is mailim u'machasa le'lam shacha. They hide and they block the light that can be brought down from the Sfiras of Atzilus. Because speech conceals. First we'll learn inside and then we'll talk. For example, by a person, hine, eis hadibur. On the one hand, the words we use to speak, heim kli laseichel v'amidus, they carry the ideas in our mind and the passions in our heart. Shem nimshachem u'mislapshem bei. The only way to communicate to another what you think and what you feel is using words. So the words communicate, the words reveal. Right? It says in Chassidus, eis noshen asa beika. They bring forward and reveal. But at the same time, letters and words hide the ideas which are inside of them, they get lost and hidden within them. And the proof that words hide is because words are not ideas. Words are conductors of ideas. Words themselves are not ideas. Words carry ideas. What's the proof? A child under a certain age, he can speak, and he can speak in an orderly way, and he can say them well. They can repeat. You give him a speech to make, as long as it's not too long and too difficult to memorize, he can repeat it. And the wisdom, the ideas, and the words that he's repeating, like a parrot, he doesn't understand at all. And if the words were themselves wise, how could he say them, not understand them? And the fact that he could say them, not understand them, proves that the words are not the ideas. The words are the conductors of the ideas. And having the words is not enough if you don't understand what the ideas mean. one is already wise, intuitive, understanding, Mikedem, before he heard or spoke or had these words spoken to him, as I made him, he's able to understand. The words in and of themselves, words by themselves don't say anything. They have sounds, you can hear them, but the meaning behind those words, if the meaning behind those words wasn't the words themselves, anybody who could say them would have to understand them because he can say them. The fact that you can say it and I know what you're talking about is because what you're saying is carrying an idea. And if you don't have the intelligence to understand the idea, you can parrot, you can say the words and they have no meaning to you. The substance of the letters themselves is bechinas helem, is hiding compared to the substance of the ideas and the feeling what they're carrying. To put this in other words, and we've talked about this over the years that we've been learning here many times. Words, you can't live with them or you can't live without them. One of the greatest gifts the Eibishter gave us is the power of speech, power of communication, dibur. And as I told you so many times, it says in Chassidus, I saw it in Hemshech Samachei, but I believe it's in the earlier Maamar as well, that there are 4 levels of intelligence. There's mechanical intelligence, there is emotional intelligence, there is the intelligence necessary for speech, and there's abstract intelligence. 4 levels. Mechanical intelligence is what they would call in behavioral psychology, in animal behavioral psychology, tool making. The ability to manipulate your environment to benefit yourself. Lahavdil, we find by animals that they have the skills to make tools. They can hunt for termites, they can build dams, they can build very complex nests and all kinds of other, they can use rocks to crack nuts and all kinds of different tools to benefit themselves. A second level of intelligence is the emotional intelligence. The intelligence to understand what another person is thinking and feeling and to manipulate them to be in a position of inferiority and fear. Politics, basically. And this kind of intelligence you find amongst very intelligent animals, lahavdil, like primates. The third level of intelligence is the intelligence necessary to speak words. And no animal can talk, as hard as they try. And they've done all kinds of experimentation, Coco the gorilla and this one and that one, that they can speak so many and so many words. But human communication is limited to human beings. The highest level of intelligence is called abstract reasoning, of course, which is strictly lahavdil elef alfi avdolos human, which is considered the highest level of intelligence. Now the irony is that speech is considered more difficult than emotional intelligence and mechanical intelligence, and yet we do it all effortlessly. We do it spontaneously. A human child, until he's 2, can't speak, and all of a sudden he starts to chatter and chatter and chatter and chatter and chatter and chatter, saying the word over and over and over again, and within a year or 6 months or whatever it is, he speaks. Because it's a gift from God. Metargum unculus on the words, Vayhi adlu nefesh chayes leruach mamalol. The Eibishter gave us the ability to speak. And the way Chassidus would argue this, it would be this. The fact that human beings speak effortlessly doesn't make speech simple. It simply makes speech a gift. Because to put together words into sentences and into paragraphs and into thoughts that are involved and comprehensive is more difficult than understanding the psychology of other people and building tools. It's just that these things are skills we have to learn. Not everybody is as skilled at them and so on. And speech is given to us by matana, but according to Kabbalah and Chassidus, the intelligence necessary to speak is more sophisticated, the intelligence to understand facial expressions and pheromones, all kinds of responses of fear and joy and so on and so forth, and certainly than mechanical intelligence. What is it about speech that makes it so deep? Why is speech considered a higher level of intelligence than emotional intelligence and mechanical intelligence? And the answer is, the chiddush of dibur is not that I can say words. The chiddush of dibur is what's called ke'ech hatziruf. An individual word is not a big deal. Many animals communicate sounds that have meanings. What's unique to human speech is that they can take the same words, arrange them in 100 different ways, and say 100 different things. You can say the same thought 5 times, each time you say them using different words. That flexibility, that freedom, that plasticity, where you can take words, organize them into sentences and paragraphs, and just say them any way you want, Any combination of mixing and matching of words to create the thought in one way or a second way or a third way, there's an enormous amount of creativity in that. And Chassidus says it's not the individual word, just the ability to mix them and match them together, to rearrange them in a theoretically infinite number of various different ways using the Keach HaDibur. That's what makes so speech extraordinary. And again, as I said earlier, the fact that we do this spontaneously and effortlessly doesn't make it easy. It simply makes it a gift. For Haraya, there are animals on this planet who have exactly the same plumbing as we do, the same vocal cords and so on, and they're very intelligent animals and they can't say a word because the Eibusha did not give them the power of communication. The power of communication is a verbal communication. The power of communication verbally is a very, very deep idea. So the ability to use words is extraordinary. The fact that you can sit with another person and gossip and talk and share memories and fears and joys and so on and so forth is an incredible gift. It's a gift that the Eibusha gave people. And our words can carry from inside us to outside us what we're thinking, what we're feeling, what we're sensing, what we're experiencing. And it makes our lives very, very, very rich. There's no question about it. This is one side of speech, the upside of speech. But there's also a downside of speech. And the downside of speech is that words are called avonim, they're called stones, rocks, oisius. The reason they're called avonim is because they're daimimim. Words in and of themselves have no life, have no light, have no intelligence. Words are vehicles, they're conduits for thoughts and ideas and feelings that come from a different part of the neshama. So when a person speaks words, they're not just saying words. The words are carrying what they're understanding, what they're feeling, and what they're sensing, and so on. So the words become a conductor of something meaningful, of something substantive. We'll call it a mahus or an oir, which is being delivered from person A to person B, from principle A to principle B, using words and letters. And the words and letters are carrying the substance, the mahus, the oir, of the one who was speaking. The rule, however, is that words are a very poor conductor. Meaning to say, like the expression which is brought in Chassidus from a Gemara, which I'm not sure even exists, in this many words, Tavne de liebe le kasve inche. Tavne, the word Tavne could mean lines. But the word Tavne could also mean colors, like Gavne de liebe le kasve inche. When you speak words, the words carry your thoughts, your feelings, your sensual experiences. But the subtlety and the nuance which is in your mind, and the subtlety and the nuance which is in your heart, and the subtlety and nuance in your experience, and the senses words cannot carry. So words are unbelievably helpful for communication, but words always fail us. They're never precise enough, they're never exact enough, never perfect enough to carry and deliver what we're thinking and feeling, understanding and feeling and sensing exactly as we understand that and we feel it and sense it. So words are so helpful for communication, but they're like a dam, they hold back, because you can only speak to another the aspects of an idea and a feeling and a sense that words can carry. There's always a nuance, there's always a subtlety, there's always a richness that words fail. Words cannot say it, and it gets lost in communication. When you understand something yourself, and you sense something, or you feel something, you have a very deep and rich sense of what it is. When you tell somebody else what you're experiencing, all they know is what they hear. And the words are a pretty good conductor, pretty good carrier in communicating what you're thinking and feeling and sensing, but that's not good enough. And there's an enormous amount lost in communication. It's a fact of life. Which is why after you hear what your teacher says, you have to think about it yourself, and then you have to extrapolate backwards. And as the Gemara says, after 40 years, it takes 40 years to understand what the teacher meant when he said it 40 years earlier. So words become a mixed bag. They become a great blessing and a great containment. The blessing of words is communicating from a higher level to a lower level, from one person to another person. And the liability of words is that what you transmit through words hides so much of the substance and the nuance and the subtlety. It's a fact of life. I mean, the dogma that's brought in Chassidus, benegated this expression, Tavna Liba Lekasv Inchi, is that the halacha is that ain't done in nefashas balayla. You can't paskin a capital case at night. So the Sanhedrin would sit a whole day and discuss it. And if they did not reach a verdict before the day is over, they would stay up all night and discuss it. Either in pairs or as individuals, and they would spend the whole night reviewing the halacha. And the following morning, as soon as the sun would rise, they would paskin chayav or pater. So the question becomes, what was the point of staying up all night? Let's go to sleep, get a good night's sleep, you come back in the morning, you'll read the transcript, you read the Divrei HaMezakav, Divrei Machayev, which was written down by the Seferim, and you'll remember what you thought the previous day, and you'll offer your psak, and they'll carry it out. So on this it says the answer, Tavna the Liba Lekatz Ve'inch. If you go to sleep in the middle of a din Torah, as a Rav, as a Dayan, and you wake up the next morning, you do not remember what you heard the day before. You remember the words. But the feeling that you had, the nuanced feeling, the sense that you had about who's telling the truth and who's lying, and so on and so forth, which you experienced, Pshas, the din Torah is lost on you. Because words cannot carry it. So if you read a transcript of your own words from the day before, the words are there, what the words mean you understand, but the oir, the transcendent component, which was the real svara behind your psak, is lost, because words can't carry it. That's why they had to stay up all night and discuss it, so when they came in the morning, they would experience still the oil, which is the initial motivation for their psak, and they'll have to give a psak din with full authority. So that's the liability of words. And of course, the nimshal is, the words is what separates Atzilus from Bria. Atzilus is the world of Eir, the key godliness. The end of Atzilus is Malchus Peh, the Eibishter's mouth, which speaks and reveals the Torah, number one, and speaks and affects the creation of the world, number two. But in this speech that the Eibishter says in creating the world, there's an enormous amount of concealment. There's a blockage, so that the words that the Eibishter says in creating the world hide so much of the subtlety and the nuance of Elokus, which is lost in as much as creation is concerned. Now there's an additional concept, which is called Parsa, which is separate between Atzilus and Bria, which the Rebbe doesn't bring up here, so we're going to leave it alone. But it's also a contributing factor to the Tzimtzum. What's important to understand is that Malchus of Atzilus carries the light of Atzilus and delivers it to Bria through speech. And because Malchus of Atzilus carries the light of Atzilus and it delivers to Bria through speech, Bria becomes a recipient of a lesser light from what was in Atzilus. And this phenomena, that the words of Malchus of Atzilus, again with the help of the Parsa, which we're not going to discuss, delivers the light, the oil of Atzilus, into Bria in a very diminished way, is the Tzimtzum of Yam. It's the concept that there is a sea which blocks and separates, just like words that on the one hand deliver, on the other hand block and obstruct. Similarly, Malchus of Atzilus allows what comes into the lower world, comes out of the Yam to reach the lower level, but in doing so there's an enormous amount of Tzimtzum. V'lachein, line 17, accordingly, Lamaila, the creation of the lower three worlds, Bria Tzir Nasiya, beginning with Chochmah, which is the highest sphere of the lower three worlds, says the Rebbe, it's rak min hadibur elin. It comes from the Eibishter's speech, lay, and not what's above it. Lay kemei b'mashal. Shalei meidu chacham b'kedem. It isn't like one who hears what a teacher says, and he's already intelligent. And because he's already intelligent, he doesn't only hear words, but he understands what the word is saying. As opposed to between Bria and Atzilus, the words are being delivered and the Makabel has no intelligence. In other words, when you say that Dibur, words, reveal but also conceal, there's two aspects to the concealment. The first aspect of the concealment is that words cannot carry all the nuance and subtlety of an idea and a feeling and a sense. And the second idea is if you hear the words and you don't know the ideas, you don't have the intelligence to understand the wisdom hidden in those words, the words reveal nothing other than words themselves. And therefore, says the Rebbe, Harayim Kain accordingly, Hadibur v'ha'oisi is the Malchus d'Atzilus, the speech and the letters of Malchus of Atzilus, which come into Bria, serve as a tzimtzum in both of the aforementioned aspects. Number one, words, in the best case scenario, can only reveal what words can carry and not nuance and subtlety. And number two, in the worst case scenario, all you have is the words. You don't even know what the words mean because you don't understand the Chochmah. And as a consequence, these words which create Bria are malimim u'matzpinim. They hide and they conceal. Alachabad v'amidas d'Atzilus, of the light of Atzilus. hamislapshem b'dibur, which are revealed in dibur, but in being revealed in dibur, they're becoming mitzumtzim. Shalei yizgale klal b'briya. It shouldn't be revealed in briya whatsoever. So what happens to briya? Briya lives from words. But briya lives from words without any substance. Briya is not living from intelligent words. Briya is living from words itself. What briya lives from is a very diminished light. Like light that comes from hair. The hair is an incredible diminution. And Elam Briya's draw of life from Elam Atzilus is comparable to hair compared to the head itself. In short, the idea of Shaydus is as follows. Technically speaking, we call it Ha'ara and Ha'ara da Ha'ara. Your mind radiates ideas. Your mind reveals ideas. It comes out in the words and the thoughts that you share with others. And when an idea comes out of a human mind and reaches the mind of another human being, you see that it's intelligent and you see that it's human. Hair also grows out of the skull. And Api Kabbalah, hair is getting chayis, not from the skull or from the skin, but from the brain. But the life in an individual hair compared to the intelligence which is in the brain is called ha'ara da ha'ara, a trace of a trace, that it doesn't even hurt when you cut it, it only hurts when you pull on it, because there's so little life. And that becomes a mashal for this idea, that Hashem speaks words to create the next world. And the idea that the words that he speaks to create the next world has two aspects of tzimtzum. The higher aspect of tzimtzum is that it's revealing the understanding, the feeling, and the senses, but only to the extent that words can carry it. And the second idea of tzimtzum is that the next world, if it doesn't have the intelligence to understand what the words mean, has only the words, which is a double tzimtzum. And as the Rebbe describes it here, it's shaydus. And I'm going to suspect that in some places this is the inyan of Parsa, but we're going to leave that alone. So the Rebbe says in line 22, V'zeu inyan yam, that's the concept of the sea, Sh'nikra alma diskasi, it's the world that hides and conceals. In Malchus of Atzilus, in the world of speech, is a lot of light. But in the spoken words, there's a very diminished light, because first of all, they're carrying very little of the original light, and second of all, the next world cannot perceive the light at all, only the words. Inami, or slightly differently, Mashahadiba nikra helam hainu, another explanation for why speech is called concealment, levisha masha nimshach me'aseichel. Umislabish bahadiba, what's drawn down from one's intelligence and comes down in spoken words, zeurak chitenias haseichel, it's a peripheral level of seichel, avo pnimias haseichel, the deeper level of intelligence, efshel esgal, klal be'ez, v'diba don't come out into words. And of course, this second paragraph that we just read is much higher than the paragraph before, right? Like I explained to you, there are two steps in the tzimtzum. The first step in the tzimtzum, that words can only carry what words can carry. That's the paragraph which begins on line 23. And then there's also the possibility that if you don't understand what the words mean, you have only words. That's what he discussed in the paragraph that begins with line 17. And both steps are true, right? Between Atzilus and Briya, words are a tzimtzum. A, that they can only reveal what words can carry, and B, Elam Briya doesn't understand what the words mean. And therefore, the lower worlds do not receive at all what you have in Elam Atzilus. Elam Atzilus is Elokus, Elam Atzilus is Gilui, Elam Atzilus is Achtos, Elam Atzilus is all good stuff. And Elam Briya receives from Atzilus, but it receives words. And the amount of light and life in the words that Briya receives from Atzilus is so diminished, is so small, that it's basically cut off, basically concealed. And the Rebbe continues, Ve'inyan kriyas yamsuf. Then there's an event of cracking the yam. Hainu, what that means, I'm on line 27, that instead of the waters being held in the world of Atzilus, and what's going to the next world is only words, and words which are not even comprehended, but whatever Malchus of Atzilus reaches the next world. Hainu shala yastir adiba. Hashem speaks words, but instead of the words concealing, al ha'edes ha'al yenim ha'melubasham bay, the hidden lights which are inside of themselves, which is the intelligence and the emotion, a way of analogy, which as a sphere is the Atzilus. Of course, when you talk about Atzilus and you use ideas like intellect and emotion, it should make you very nervous, because Atzilus is ain't safe, Gili of ain't safe, but close, that's the marshal. But instead of the words hiding what Atzilus is and giving to Bria, number one, only what words can carry, and number two, only the words themselves with no substance, instead, Sheyizgala Mamish L'Neshamas de Bria, it's revealed in the lower world, Gamkin also K'meishu Agili B'Atzilus as it is in Atzilus. And that's Kriyas Yamsuf. So basically, the Yam holds. And by the Yam holding, the next world gets so much less than what the Yam is holding, it's virtually nothing. And Kriyas Yamsuf is that Hashem wants to reveal in the lower worlds, in the Elam is Bria, Yetzir, and Asiya, what you have in Elam Atzilus. That in the lower world there should be a revelation of Ein Seif, which is in Elam Atzilus. Now, this Maamar doesn't talk about this, but the Middle Rebbe talks about it, and there's so many other Maamar Chassidus that talk about it as well. That there's two ways of understanding this event. And the Rebbe calls it a machlokes between the Zayar and the Arizal. And the Zayar was written by Tanoim. The Arizal lived 500 years ago. But you're talking about the same Madrege. What's the difference? The difference is whether you say B'tei Chayom Bayabasha or Bayabasha B'tei Chayom. In other words, is Kriyas Yamsuf an event which raises up the lower three worlds, which are called Yabasha, into Atzilus, which is called Yam? Then in the lower three worlds we should experience the sea of Atzilus. Or is it the other way around? B'tei Chayom Bayabasha, that the waters of Atzilus reach the lower three worlds. In other words, Kriyas Yamsuf is certainly breaking a wall, a barrier. So that in the lower worlds of Bria, Yetzir, and Asiya, there should be the same kind of a Gili which you have in Ein Seif, in Atzilus. But is it that Atzilus is brought into the lower three worlds, so the lower three worlds receive Atzilus, or the lower three worlds are raised up into Atzilus? But be that as it may, that's the concept of Kriyas Yamsuf. And I told you in my introduction, and of course you're going to see this later on, the point of all this is to set up the Torah. The Torah is the revelation of Elokus from a higher level to a lower level. The preparation to receiving the Torah is the end of Kriyas Yamsuf. So, understand the Yam. We'll get back to the Nor in a different shir, possibly the next one, but at the moment, the idea of Kriyas Yamsuf is that the Elokus, which exists in Atzilus, should come into the lower three worlds as a preparation for the Matan Torah. And the way the Yam split, when the Yidden left Mitzrayim, was split into 12. Right? And Asad Lov is going to split into 7. So the Rebbe now explains the concept of 12. Whereas the splitting of the sea, of Yam, is as Chabras Abriya Matzilus, is joining Bria with Atzilus, with Malchus of Atzilus, Mamish Beli Paris of Masach Mafsik V'cholu. L'chaynikra Yam Liyud Beis Gezorim is divided up into 12 parts, because the number 12 has to do with the transmission from Atzilus to Bria. That's how it works. The number 12 has to do with the transmission from Atzilus to Bria. You'll see momentarily that 12 begins in Chitzenius Zoh. And the 12 which begins in Chitzenius Zoh fully manifests in Bria. So the splitting of the Yam into 12 parts means the revelation of Atzilus into Bria into the 12 parts, which is basically the communication between Atzilus and Bria. The Nohar is 7, the Bekias Nohar is 7, because that's the Pnimius of Zohar. That's the way the numbers are going to work. Okay? Let's do some reading. Yehine. Hashvatim heim beBria. The Shvatim, as opposed to the others, are in Bria, and they're Yud Beis. There's 12 Shvatim. Why the 12 Shvatim? They correspond to these 12 Gizorim. What it really is 4 Mides, right? And each one has 3. You have 4 sides. Each one has 3. Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, Malchus. And each one has 3. So 4 is 12. The Malachim are also in 12, because it says in Psukim, it says in Chasidus, in Kabbalah, and so on, that Yud Beis Bakar, there's 12 oxen, Vayam Aleihem Mamayla. I think this is by Shlomo HaMelech's Yam, that there was a pool which was supported by 12 oxen. Of course, this is all mystical. The Yud Beis Bakar is 3 from Chesed, 3 from Gevurah, 3 from Tiferes, and 3 from Malchus. The Remiyos and Derechal Arba Machnes. In general, there's only 4. Mechol, Gavriel, Refal, Uriel. Okmeish, because it is written in the Pasuk, and we'll talk about this at length later on in this Maimon and Misham, Yi, part of the Vayla Barashim, the river divides into 4, which comes into Bria, Mekol Makam, nevertheless, Kolachad Mischalak L'Shalosh. Each one of the 4 is divided into 3. 3 times 4 is 12. Kamei Yud Beis Shvatim, like the 12 tribes, Shahayu Dalad the Golem. The 12 tribes are also divided into 4. There were 4 flags, right? Reuven, Shimon, and Gad. Menashe, Ephraim, Binyamin, and so on and so forth. Yud Yisach and Zvulun. V'chol degel yesh begimel shvatim. Each flag has 3 shvatim. Therefore, 4 becomes 12. V'ukmei shebiyad yesh begimel pirkim chen beregel. Each hand has 3 parts, right? 1, 2, 3 that you can see above the surface. So 4 becomes 12. So the reason the Yam splits into 12 parts is because the communication between Atzilas and Bria is divided into 12. And the Kriyas Yamsuf, which causes that the light from the higher world should come with the low world, correspondingly divides up into these 12. And he continues, Hagam shashvatim atmahim bebriya, to be sure the shvatim are in Bria, mikom makom shoshim, mamekerim, it's based on Atzilas, they come from Atzilas. But they come from the level of Atzilas, which is also 12. I don't want to go into this at length for more reasons than one. But simply think of it in these terms. There are 6 midas. The 6 midas are Ein Seif. In other words, Chesed by itself is Ein Seif of Chesed. Gevura by itself is Ein Seif of Gevura. The upside to Ein Seif is obviously that it's infinite. The downside of Ein Seif is that you can't communicate it. But where's the beginning of Ein Seif? The mashal for Ein Seif is a circle. Just like you say about an oval, Ein Lepeh, Ein Seif is an eagle. Can't reveal itself. In order to make a midah, which is by itself Ein Seif, revealed to something other, you have to limit it. How do you limit a midah? By joining it with its counterpart. So if you have 6 midas, each one by itself is Ein Seif, by joining it with a counterpart, it becomes with a seif and communicable. That's the number 12. The number 12 is that each midah, each one of the 6 has an opposite, and by each one of the 6 having an opposite, the opposite limits what would otherwise be an infinite midah, and makes it communicable. So the Yud Beis Gvuli Alachsan of Zah is the Chitzenius of Zah. The downside is that it's finite and not infinite, and the upside is that it's communicable. So the Rebbe says the Yud Beis Bakar of El Mabriya begin in Atzilus, but on the Chitzenius of Zah. Well, the Kriyas Yamsuf, when they are splitting the sea, and the Tzimtzum and the Helim, right, the concealment that normally causes that the Ein Seif should be only in Atzilus. And Bria should get only words, whether those words are revealing Chitzenius HaSeichel, or the words are revealing nothing other than the words themselves, which Al-Derech Mashal Shaydis. Kriyas Yamsuf breaks that separation, and the same enlightenment which you have in Atzilus, you have in Bria, and it comes through the 12 channels, which are the basis for the world of Bria. Kriyas Yamsuf, the splitting of the sea. Shu Chibur. V'aliyas habriya ba'atzilus. It's the joining and the ascent of Bria into Atzilus. Or as I said before, the bringing down of Atzilus into Bria based on this machlokes between the Zayir and the Arizal. Harezis chabros v'aliyas hayid beis shvatim de Bria. It's the joining and the raising up, or the bringing down of the 12 shvatim of Bria with Yud Beis Gvuli Alachsan of Atzilus. They're joining with the Ein Sof which is in Atzilus. Which is why we divided up into 12, because every shevet has its own path. Each one has a different shad. Each one connects to the Eibishter in a different way. And that's the prat of Kriyas, that's the pshat, Kriyas Yamsuf. Kriyas Yamsuf means not that Hashem physically split a sea to save the Jews from the Egyptians, although that's true. The splitting of the sea is breaking a barrier, which does legezer yamsuf legzorim, that doesn't allow the Ein Sof, which is an Atzilus, to come into Bria, that it should spill over into Bria. The Yam, which is holding back and causing that in the lower world there should be no Gilui, is shattered, and with the Yam, which is holding back, which is causing that there should no Gilui, is shattered. There's a revelation of Atzilus and Elam Bria. And we'll continue Mitzvah Hashem next time.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.